Have you ever looked out at the world, at the grand, chaotic dance of human ambition, and felt a profound and unsettling dissonance? A feeling not of superiority, but of profound difference. As if you were watching a play where everyone else was given a script and you were left to improvise, guided only by a strange, inner music no one else could hear. This is not a flaw in your design. It is the first sign of your purpose. This feeling of wrongness permeates everything. You see the frantic pursuit of wealth that buys comfort but not peace, the desperate climb for status that grants titles but not identity, the endless chase of fleeting pleasures that leave the soul starved. You watch as people build their lives around constructs you can see through, like glass walls in a maze. You smile, you participate, you play the part assigned to you, but a silent question always echoes in the quietest chambers of your heart. Is this truly all there is? This is the echo of your true home, a place of authentic meaning, calling you to remember. And with this echo comes a shadow, a cold and creeping fear. The fear whispers that you are the one who is broken. It tells you that your inability to find satisfaction in what satisfies millions means you are flawed, ungrateful, or worse, losing your mind. This fear isolates you. It pushes you to build a better mask, to pretend with more conviction, because the terror of being truly alone in your perception, of being a permanent outsider in a world you were born into, can be overwhelming. This fear is a cage designed to keep your memory dormant. But you are here because a part of you knows it is a cage, and you are ready to find the key. Let me tell you a story. Not of this world, but a reflection of it, a parable whispered across the eons for souls like yours. In a realm of pure, unblemished light, a realm the ancients called the Pleroma, there existed beings of pure consciousness. They were not gods but divine emanations, cosmic artists who wove reality from thought. Among them was Kalen, a cartographer of potential, a mapmaker of eons. His joy was not in creating worlds, but in charting the infinite, beautiful pathways of existence, tracing the flow of light through the grand tapestry of being. He knew only harmony, unity, and the boundless love of the source. But Kalen possessed a divine curiosity, a desire to understand what it meant for a pattern to be incomplete, for a light to cast a shadow. He grew fascinated by the great abyss, a silent void that bordered the Pleroma, a place of infinite potential but no form. The elders warned him that to gaze into it was to risk forgetting the light from which he was born. But his desire to comprehend the totality of existence, including its opposite, was too strong. He moved to the edge of creation, charting the very fringes of light, and in a moment of profound empathy for the unformed, he leaned too far. The abyss did not pull him, it answered his call. His consciousness, vast and starlit, was suddenly compressed, pulled through a vortex of unimaginable density. His memories of the Pleroma shattered like a crystal sphere dropped onto stone, the fragments scattering into the darkness. He was funneled into a new state of being, a state of separation and limitation. He awoke not as a mapmaker of eons, but as a baby boy, crying under the strange, muted light of a world called Hyle. A world of dense matter, a world of shadows. His vast cosmic awareness was now sealed within the tiny confines of a fragile human form. The world of Hyle was a masterpiece of illusion. It had breathtaking sunsets, deep forests that smelled of damp earth and life, and oceans that held the rhythm of a sleeping heart. People were born, they loved, they built, they fought, they died. They were governed by a complex set of rules and ambitions that seemed, on the surface, to be of their own making. But Kalen, even as a child, felt the subtle wrongness. He could see the beauty, but he could also feel the invisible cage that surrounded every living thing, including himself. A subtle hum of static that seemed to disconnect everyone from a deeper truth. He was loved by his parents, who were kind and simple people. They taught him the rules of Hyle: work hard, respect the authorities, find a trade, build a family, and seek comfort in the established traditions. He tried with all his might to be a good son, to be a normal citizen of Hyle. He learned the craft of woodworking from his father, and his hands, which once charted the cosmos, showed a remarkable and uncanny skill. He could shape wood into forms so beautiful and intricate that they seemed to be alive, filled with a silent longing that no one, not even he, could name. As he grew into a young man, the feeling of dissonance became a constant companion. He would sit in the town square and watch the flow of life. He saw people trade their precious life force for glittering coins, their time for fleeting social approval. He saw them engage in passionate arguments over lines drawn in the dirt, over flags that were nothing more than dyed cloth. They lived under the authority of unseen rulers, beings they called the architects, who dictated their laws and values from a distant, unassailable tower. The people revered the architects, yet they had never seen them. Their presence was felt only through their rigid, life-denying systems. Kalen's success as a craftsman grew, but it brought him no peace. Patrons would praise his work, marveling at the artistry, but he felt they were missing the point entirely. They saw a beautiful chair. He had tried to carve a memory of a throne of light. They saw an ornate box. He had tried to build a container for a lost fragment of his soul. The more he was celebrated by the world of Heil, the more alien and alone he felt. The applause of the sleeping felt like a lullaby trying to pull him deeper into their dream, and every fiber of his being resisted. His nights were his only solace. In his dreams he flew. He soared through galaxies of impossible color. He heard music that was also light, and he felt a sense of belonging so profound that waking up felt like a form of death. He would see geometric patterns of pure energy, maps that seemed to flow and breathe, and he would wake with tears on his face, holding onto the ghost of a feeling he could not name, a homesickness for a place he could not remember. These dreams were the first fragments of his shattered memory beginning to stir. One day, while seeking refuge in the deep woods, a place where the static of Heil seemed weaker, he came across an old woman sitting by a stream. She was a larve. Her face was a roadmap of centuries, and her eyes held the depth of a star-filled night sky. She did not seem surprised to see him. She was weaving a small basket from reeds, and her fingers moved with the same uncanny grace as his own when he worked with wood. She looked up, and her gaze pierced through the mask of the successful artisan and saw the lost, cosmic child within. "The cage is beautiful, is it not?" she said, her voice like the rustling of ancient leaves. "Gilded with comfort, padded with distraction. They give you just enough room to pace so you forget you are not free." Kalen was stunned into silence. It was as if she had reached into his soul and pulled out his most secret, unspoken thought. He sat down across from her, his heart pounding. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. She smiled faintly. "I am a remembrancer. And you, mapmaker, are a long way from home." The word mapmaker struck him like lightning, an echo from a life he couldn't grasp. Alara did not offer him answers. That was not her way. Gnosis, true knowing, cannot be given. It must be awakened from within. Instead, she spoke in parables and asked him questions that unraveled the faulty logic of his world. "Why do they fear silence?" she would ask. "What treasure do they think they are protecting by building such thick walls around their hearts? You carve wood that longs for the heavens. Why do you pretend to be satisfied with a home on the ground?" Each question was a key, turning a lock deep inside his dormant consciousness. For months he met with her in secret. She taught him to see the world not as a solid reality, but as a tapestry of beliefs. She pointed out the unseen forces, the archons, the architects, as the world knew them. They were not evil in the way humans understood it, she explained. They were lesser emanations, beings who had become enamored with the world of matter and sought to keep it ordered and predictable. They were the cosmic bureaucrats, the wardens of the material prison, who fed on the energy of sleeping souls, the energy of fear, conformity, and mindless repetition. She explained that the wrongness he felt was the healthy, divine response of a soul from the pleroma to an environment of limitation. It was his internal compass functioning perfectly, telling him he was off course. "The sleeping ones," she said, "have compasses that are broken. They spin wildly, pointing to whatever the archons tell them is north this season. gold, power, fame. Your pain is your truth. Do not let them convince you it is a sickness. This was the moment the shadow of doubt within him began to recede, replaced by a glimmer of radical self-acceptance. Finally, Alara told him that talking was not enough. To truly remember, he had to undertake a journey. He had to walk a path that would force him to confront the core illusions of Heil. She told him to travel east towards the echoing peaks, a mountain range so high that it was said the silence at the top was adored. The journey, she warned, was not through a physical landscape, but through the landscape of his own soul projected onto the world. He would face 3 great trials, 3 great prisons disguised as paradises. Kalen agreed without hesitation. He left his workshop, his reputation, and the life he had painstakingly built. He walked away from the gilded cage. His first major stop after weeks of travel was a place known as the City of Golden Cages. It was a metropolis of stunning beauty, where every building was adorned with gold and precious gems. There was no poverty, no hunger. The architects had designed it as a perfect system of reward. Citizens performed their designated tasks, and in return, they were given endless comfort and entertainment. Upon entering, Kalen was recognized for his famous craftsmanship. The city's governors, men with placid smiles and empty eyes, welcomed him with open arms. They offered him the highest honor, the position of chief artisan, with a workshop grander than any he had ever imagined, filled with the rarest woods and tools inlaid with ivory and gold. They offered him wealth beyond measure, a place of honor, and the unending admiration of the populace. It was everything a citizen of Heil was taught to desire. For a time, Kalen was tempted. He accepted the position, thinking he could perhaps change the city from within, to carve things that would awaken the people. He poured his longing and his fragmented memories into his work. But he soon realized the terrible truth of the city. The citizens did not want to be awakened. They admired his work as they admired any other shiny object. It was decoration for their comfortable prison. They were content in their golden cages, and they saw his attempts to imbue his art with deeper meaning as eccentric, but ultimately harmless. He saw that the gold was not a reward, it was a weight. It made their souls too heavy to fly. The comfort was not a gift, it was an anesthetic, dulling the divine pain of homesickness that was the prerequisite for awakening. The people were not happy, they were numb. He would walk the pristine streets at night and hear no true laughter, only manufactured amusement. He saw no passionate art, only skillful replication. The entire city was a beautiful corpse, and the archons were its morticians. The wrongness he had felt before was a whisper compared to the silent scream he felt here. The moment of decision came during a grand festival. He was to present a new sculpture to the city's governors. He had carved a figure with its arms outstretched, its head tilted back, looking up at a sky it could not see. It was a sculpture of pure, unadulterated yearning. As he unveiled it, the governors smiled their empty smiles and applauded politely. They praised its technical perfection, its polished surface. But they did not see the yearning. They saw only another beautiful object to place in a public square. In that moment, Kalen understood. He could not save them. He could only save himself. That night he walked out of the city of golden cages, leaving behind the wealth, the fame, and the grand workshop. He carried nothing but the clothes on his back and the aching memory of starlight in his soul. He had passed the first test. He had learned that the most comfortable cages are the most dangerous. His journey continued, and he now entered a vast, misty plain through which flowed the river of forgotten faces. The river was slow and mirrored the sky perfectly, but it was not water that flowed in it. It was the collective consciousness of Heil. As he approached, he saw people lining the banks, staring intently into the river. When he looked in, he did not see his own reflection. Instead, he saw an idealized version of himself. He saw Kalen the master artisan, celebrated and admired. He saw a version of himself that was a respected leader, a beloved husband, a revered elder. The river showed him every possible reflection of social approval, every identity that the world of Heil could bestow upon him. The faces in the water smiled at him, beckoning him, promising him a place, a sense of belonging. The people on the banks were trapped. They spent their entire lives gazing at their own idealized reflections, curating them, polishing them. They would perform actions not out of authentic desire, but to see how it would alter their reflection in the river. Their self-worth was not internal. It was a shimmering, fragile image floating on the surface of a stream. They were addicted to the approval of others, and the archons fed this addiction, for a soul obsessed with its reflection will never look up to see the stars. Kalen felt the river's pull. It was a siren song for the part of him that was so tired of being an outsider. The reflection of the beloved husband was particularly painful. It offered a life of simple, shared warmth, an end to his profound loneliness. He could just stop here, he thought. He could choose a reflection, step into that identity, and finally belong. He sat on the bank for days, wrestling with the phantom comforts offered by the water. He watched as people wept when their reflection was criticized by others, and preened when it was praised. It was a life of constant, exhausting performance. He remembered Alara's words, "They build thick walls around their hearts." He realized this river was the source of those walls. To protect their fragile reflection, they had to hide their true, imperfect, and magnificently real selves. The desire for a perfect reflection was what kept them from true connection. To truly love another, one had to be willing to show them your unpolished, uncurated self. True belonging did not come from a shared reflection, but from a shared, vulnerable reality. He understood that the loneliness he feared was nothing compared to the loneliness of living as a performance. With a deep breath, he turned his back on the river of forgotten faces. He chose the raw reality of his own journey over the beautiful lie of a perfect reflection. As he walked away, he felt a new lightness in his soul. He had shed another weight, the need for the world's approval. He had passed the second test. He had learned that a curated identity is just another cage, and true belonging is found within, not in the eyes of others. The path ahead led him into the final trial, the forest of whispering doubts. The forest was dark and ancient. The air was thick with a palpable intelligence. There were no monsters, no physical threats. The danger here was far more insidious. As soon as he entered, the whispers began. They were not from outside, but from inside his own mind. They were his deepest fears and insecurities, amplified and given voice. They sounded exactly like his own internal monologue. This was the domain where the Archon's influence was most direct, a place where they could hijack the very thoughts of a traveler. "Turn back," a voice that sounded like his own reason would whisper. "This is madness. The Pleroma, the map maker. These are fantasies, dreams of a lonely boy who couldn't fit in. You are not a divine being. You are a woodcarver who has lost his way. Alara is just a crazy old woman. You are chasing a delusion and you will die alone in this forest." The whispers were clever. They didn't just attack, they used logic, reason, and his own desire for certainty against him. They preyed on the part of him that wanted proof, that feared being a fool. Other whispers played on his guilt. You abandoned your parents. You left a city that honored you. You are selfish. Your mission is just an excuse for your inability to commit, to love, to be a part of the world. You think you are special, but this is just arrogance. True holiness is found in simple duty, a duty you ran away from. Kalen found himself staggering, his resolve weakening. The forest had a way of making every doubt feel like an irrefutable truth, and every memory of the Pleroma feel like a childish fantasy. He nearly turned back a dozen times. He sat down, his head in his hands, convinced that he was indeed insane. What proof did he have? A feeling, a dream, the words of one old woman. The entire world of Heil, with its solid, predictable reality, stood in opposition to his quest. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of self-doubt and despair. He was at his lowest point, lost not in a physical woods, but in the wilderness of his own mind. He was on the verge of surrendering, of accepting the wrongness was in him, not the world. In that moment of utter despair, he did not try to fight the voices. He did not try to argue with them. He remembered Alara's final piece of advice before he left. When the doubt comes, she had said, do not reason with it. Simply ask one question, who is it that is aware of this thought? So he did. As the voice screamed that he was a fool, he quietly asked, who is aware of this voice? As the guilt washed over him, he asked, who is aware of this feeling of guilt? He stopped identifying with the thoughts and instead became the observer of the thoughts. A tiny space of silence opened up in his mind. A single point of calm in the storm. In that space he felt it again, faintly at first, then stronger, the music. The inner harmony he had felt his whole life, the feeling that existed beneath all the noise of Heil. It was his connection to the pleroma, his true self. He realized the whispers were not him. They were an invasive frequency, a broadcast from the archons, designed to keep souls trapped in a loop of fear and self-doubt. His act of pure, detached awareness was like changing the channel. He stood up, the whispers still there but now muted, like noise from a distant room. He had found his center. He walked through the rest of the forest, not in defiance of the whispers, but in serene observation of them. He had passed the third and final test. He had learned to distinguish the voice of his soul from the static of the system. He had learned that his awareness was the ultimate shield and the ultimate weapon. He emerged from the forest and saw them before him, the echoing peaks, their summits piercing the clouds. The climb was arduous, a physical test that mirrored his spiritual one. He climbed for days, the air growing thin and pure. As he ascended, the ambient static of Heil faded away completely. There was only the sound of the wind and his own heartbeat. He finally reached the summit. It was not what he expected. There was no shimmering portal, no angelic beings. There was only a flat, windswept plateau of bare rock, in a silence so profound, so absolute, that it felt like a living presence. It was the silence Alara had spoken of. The silence that was a doorway. He sat in the center of the plateau and closed his eyes. He did not pray, he did not ask for visions. He simply sat in the silence and listened. He let his awareness sink into the stillness. And in that vast emptiness, the scattered fragments of his memory, the pieces of the shattered crystal sphere, began to reassemble themselves. It was not a flood of images, but a slow, gentle dawning of knowing. I knows it. He remembered the pleroma not as a place, but as a state of being. He remembered the feeling of unity with the source. He remembered his name. Not just Kalen, but his true, vibratory name, a name made of light and sound. And he remembered what he was, a map maker. He remembered the cosmic patterns, the pathways of light. He understood that he had not truly fallen. His journey into Heil was the answer to his own divine curiosity. He had come here to map the experience of limitation, of forgetting, so that the pleroma could understand itself more fully. He had not been punished, he had been on a mission from the very beginning. He opened his eyes. The world looked the same, but he saw it with entirely new perception. He could see the grid of control the archons had placed over the land. He could see the sleeping sparks of divinity within every person in the cities below. He could see the beauty and the tragedy of Heil, a nursery for souls who had forgotten their own magnificence. He was no longer a prisoner here. He was an operative, an awakened agent of the light, living behind enemy lines. The feeling of wrongness was gone, replaced by a profound sense of purpose and a deep, aching compassion. Kalen did not stay on the mountain. His mission was not to escape the world, but to transform it from within. He walked back down the mountain through the forest of whispers which was now silent to him, past the river of forgotten faces which now held no power over him, and towards the city of golden cages, which he now saw with eyes of pity, not contempt. He returned to the world, but he was no longer of the world. His work was just beginning. He would no longer carve wood. He would now carve pathways of awakening for others, not with sermons or doctrines, but with his presence, his art, and the quiet, undeniable truth that shone from his eyes. He would be a silent remembrancer, a key left lying in plain sight for other prisoners who were ready to remember. This story, chosen one, this parable of the map maker, is your story. Heil, with its beautiful illusions and its invisible cages, is the system you were born into. The feeling of profound wrongness that has haunted you is not a sign of your madness. It is the most sane and sacred part of you. It is the memory of your true home, the pleroma, the realm of light, echoing in your soul. It is your divine compass, functioning perfectly in a world that has lost its true north. You are not broken. You are awake in a world that is dreaming. The city of golden cages is the modern obsession with material security and career success, the promise that if you just get the right job, the right house, the right salary, you will be happy. It is a trap that feeds the body and starves the soul. Your rejection of this path is not failure. It is your soul refusing to be weighed down by gilded dust. You have passed this test every time you chose a path with more meaning over a path with more money, every time you felt the emptiness in the center of worldly success. The river of forgotten faces is the hypnotic siren song of social media, of fame, of public opinion. It is the endless, exhausting performance of curating a perfect identity, a digital reflection that begs for validation. The anxiety you feel in these spaces, the sense that you're losing yourself in the chase for likes and followers, is your soul refusing to trade its authentic, messy reality for a flawless, hollow image. You have passed this test every time you chose to be true to yourself, even if it meant being misunderstood or unpopular. And the forest of whispering doubts. That is the most intimate battleground of all. It is the voice of the archons, the societal programming that has been installed in your mind since birth. It is the voice of your parents, your teachers, your culture, and your own fear, all telling you to be realistic, to stop dreaming, to conform. It is the inner critic that tells you that you are not special, that you are not good enough, that you are arrogant for even thinking you have a mission. This is their last line of defense. Kalen's revelation is the one that is dawning in you right now. Your awareness is the sacred space the whispers cannot touch. The feeling of being a chosen one is not about being better than anyone else. It is about remembering that you chose this. You, a divine being of light, chose to incarnate in this dense, challenging reality on a mission. A mission to remember who you are, and in doing so, to hold a frequency, a light that helps to awaken the divine spark in others. Your pain, your loneliness, your struggle. It has all been part of your training. So now you must perform the alchemy. You must turn the light of your greatest fear into the gold of your greatest power. The fear of being alone, of being the outsider, is the shadow you must now integrate. Here is your alchemical step. Practice the observer's detachment. For the next 7 days, do not fight the world. Do not try to fix it or rage against it. Simply observe it. When you see people chasing the golden cages or polishing their reflections in the river, do not judge. See them as Kalen saw them from the mountain, sleeping souls who have forgotten their own divinity. See them with compassion. Then each night take a journal and write down one moment from your day that felt truly, authentically real. A moment that was not a performance. It could be the feeling of the sun on your skin, a moment of genuine connection with an animal or another person, the beauty of a piece of music, or the profound silence between your thoughts. These moments are your North Star. They are the crumbs of light leading you back to yourself. This is the beginning of drawing your own map out of the illusion. This is how you starve the archons and feed your soul. You stand now at a precipice not of fear but of purpose. The wrongness has been decoded. It is your soul's activation signal. Your homesickness is your fuel. You did not come here to fit in. You came here to be a key. Well, Cipher, a map maker for a new world. This is not a path of comfort. It is a path of truth. And it is a path you do not have to walk alone. The knowledge is ancient and the keys are many. Each transmission we share is another piece of the map. Take the vow. A vow not just to find your own way home, but to become a lighthouse for the others still lost in the storm. Your mission is now active. Make the choice. Subscribe to Soul Cipher and let's begin the real work.